Unlock life's powerful lessons hidden deep within nature. I want to take you to a moment in my life that nearly broke me. Until it saved me. It was raining, not the poetic kind of rain you read about in novels, but the kind that soaks you to the bone and makes you wonder if the sky is crying for you. I had just lost a job I thought defined me. My relationship had ended days before. My phone buzzed non-stop, not with comfort, but with debt reminders, expectations, and failure echoing from every direction. I grabbed my keys and drove with no destination in mind, desperate for silence, for something that made sense. And then, I found it, or rather, it found me. A forest. I parked at a trailhead I'd never seen before, stepped into the storm, and walked until the mud covered my shoes and the noise in my head softened. I remember stopping at a tree. Just a tree, but in that moment, it felt like the tree saw me. It didn't speak, but it didn't have to. Something ancient stood inside it. Something still. Something I desperately wanted inside of me. That was the first time I understood Stoicism. Not from a book, but from nature. And in this video, we're going to unlock life's most powerful lessons hidden deep within nature. We're going to climb mountains without leaving our chairs, confront inner chaos with the silence of the wild, and come face to face with truths that philosophers spent lifetimes trying to explain, all through the language of trees, storms, rivers, and stars. This isn't just a story, it's your invitation to see the world differently, to live more deeply, and to finally understand why everything you need might already surround you, if you know how to look. So let me ask you, when was the last time you really listened to the wind? Let's find out what it's been trying to say to you. Blank. Underscore. Blank. When I first started walking through the forest that day, I wasn't searching for meaning. I was running from pain. And yet, every step forward felt like a step inward. I started noticing things, noticing how the trees didn't rush, but still reached the sky, how the river didn't resist the rocks. It flowed because of them. And I realized, nature is what Stoicism looks like when it breathes. We often think Stoicism is about suppressing emotions, like turning off a faucet. But it's not. It's about learning to flow like that river, acknowledging every stone and still moving forward with grace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "No role is so well suited to philosophy as the one you happen to be in right now." That hit differently in the middle of a storm. Because here I was, a broken man standing in front of ancient strength. And for the first time, I realized, I wasn't a victim of life's chaos. I was a part of it. Just like the trees, I'd be shaped by storms. But here's where it gets even crazier. I sat under that tree and began to journal, using my phone's notes app with frozen fingers. And I wrote one question. Why do trees never complain? Think about that. Trees are exposed to everything. Storms, fire, drought, wind. They don't get to move. They can't avoid suffering, yet they still grow, quietly, steadily, upward. We get one bad comment, one failed exam, one breakup, and we crumble. What if we lived more like trees? This is where the Stoic insight hit me hardest. Nature doesn't waste energy fighting what it can't control. The tree doesn't yell at the wind. It bends. The river doesn't rage at the mountain. It carves through it, drop by drop. We spend so much time fighting things we can't change, while nature just adapts, not with weakness, but with silent strength. And right there, under the rain, I made a decision. I was done resisting everything. I would learn from nature. I would live like a mountain when people tried to shake me, flow like water when obstacles appeared, and grow like a tree, quietly, even in the dark. But the journey was just beginning. Because what happened next flipped everything I believed on its head. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Teaser title. The river that taught me the most brutal truth about inner peace, and why it hurt so much to learn it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. I didn't go back to the forest right away. Honestly, I was scared. Scared of what I'd see in myself if I stood still again. Nature has a way of stripping your ego bare. But a week later, I returned, same path, same silence, but this time, I followed the river. And let me tell you, it changed everything. This river didn't roar, it whispered, but it cut through massive stone over centuries, not with force, but with persistence. And as I followed it, I noticed something odd. Some parts were calm and mirror-like, others were violent and frothy, smashing into boulders, yet all of it was the same river. That's when it hit me. Emotions are like rivers. Sometimes we feel still, sometimes we're in chaos, but it's all movement, all temporary, all part of something larger. I had always tried to control how I felt, push down anger, avoid sadness, pretend everything was okay. But nature doesn't do that. The river doesn't pretend the rapids aren't real. It just lets them happen, then keeps moving. Stoicism isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about owning your flow. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's because we're too busy building dams in our minds, trapping feelings, blocking experiences, fearing the future. But nature flows. It trusts itself. So I asked myself, what if I trusted myself too? What if, when heartbreak came, I let it flow through me like water over rock, knowing it would pass? What if, instead of resisting every challenge, I allowed life to shape me? Because here's the wild part. The most beautiful canyons on earth were carved by rivers that refused to stop. Our pain is not punishment. It's sculpting. Your heartbreak, your failure, your grief? Those are rivers carving your soul into something more vast, more resilient, more profound. But only if you let them. I walked further and found a spot where the river had split in two. Half diverted by a fallen tree, I watched as both branches flowed peacefully around the obstacle, rejoining later downstream. And I thought, that's what life does when plans fall apart. It diverts, but it still moves. We think detours mean failure, but nature knows, they're just part of the path. So I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, where is this trying to take me? And that one shift changed everything. What the mountains revealed about fear, and the Stoic trick to conquering it without fighting. So a few days later, I took a risk. I packed a small bag, drove 4 hours away, and climbed a mountain I'd never been on before, alone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just me, a steep trail, and the raw, untamed stillness of nature. Why? Because I needed to face something I'd been running from for years. My fear. And nothing exposes your fear faster than climbing toward the sky with nothing but your breath and your thoughts to guide you. The mountain doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how many followers you have or how busy your calendar is. It will test your legs, your lungs, and your will. But here's what the mountain did care about: truth. Halfway up, I started shaking, not from cold, but from the stories in my head. What if you fall? What if you're not strong enough? What if no one finds you? My heart raced. I stopped walking. I could have turned back. But then I remembered a Stoic truth that hit me like a bolt of lightning. You don't fear the thing. You fear your judgment of the thing. That's Epictetus. I wasn't afraid of the mountain. I was afraid of my mind turning it into a monster. So I stood there, looked up at the peak I couldn't see, and asked myself the question I now ask whenever fear visits me. What if I wasn't afraid of this at all? Seriously, ask yourself that, about anything. What if I wasn't afraid to fail? What if I wasn't afraid to be alone? What if I wasn't afraid of what people thought? What's left, once the fear goes silent? What emerges is clarity, power, and motion. So I kept climbing. Each step became a mantra, each breath, a lesson. Because here's what you learn fast in nature: fear is just fog. And fog always lifts if you keep moving. By the time I reached the summit, something inside me had shifted. I didn't just feel proud. I felt empty in the best way. Like I had finally laid down the weight of every imagined disaster I had been carrying for years. I looked out at the horizon, and this quote from Marcus Aurelius echoed in my head. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions, than your own soul, especially when it has been cleansed like this. And that's when it really clicked. The mountain wasn't the test. I was the test. My reactions, my beliefs, my willingness to rise through the fear instead of bowing to it. We want peace without challenge, but nature knows, they're the same thing. A mountain is peace, because it was born from collision. Storms are nature's order, because they clear the dead weight. Pain is transformation, because without it, you remain soil that never gives birth to anything new. And that brings me to the next turning point. Something that punched through me so hard I still feel it in my chest. It happened at dusk, on my way back down. I sat on a rock, overlooking a valley slowly fading into shadow, and I saw something unexpected, a tiny flower growing out of a crack in the rock. Not in a field, not in soft soil, in stone. That single flower taught me more than any book ever has. It didn't complain. It didn't wait for better conditions. It bloomed anyway. And in that moment, I broke down crying, because I realized I had spent so much of my life waiting. Waiting for the right moment to heal, to forgive, to begin again. Waiting for the pain to pass before I found joy. But this flower, in the middle of stone, said otherwise. It said, life doesn't wait. Life doesn't need perfect. Life is now. And just like that, I got it. This was the essence of Stoicism, not just resilience, but radical presence. To live, fully, no matter the conditions. To bloom, even if the world says you shouldn't. To rise, even when nothing makes sense. That's what nature is doing every single moment, and we miss it, because we're too distracted. Too anxious, too obsessed with what's next or what's missing. So I'll ask you now, as I asked myself then. Where have you been waiting to live? What flower is hiding inside you, waiting to bloom, but only once the conditions are perfect? And what if that flower doesn't need perfect? What if it just needs permission? Yours. The forest fire that shattered me, and revealed the Stoic secret to starting over stronger than before. 3 weeks after that mountain climb, I returned to the forest where this whole journey began. But something was different. Charred bark, burnt undergrowth, ash-covered ground, a forest fire had torn through. It was haunting, beautiful in a tragic way, and it felt like the world was trying to teach me one last lesson. One I wasn't ready for. Because as I stood there among the blackened trunks and smoky air, something inside me broke again. This place had become my sanctuary, my church, my teacher, and now it looked dead. But nature wasn't done teaching me. Because just beneath the ash, I saw a green. Tiny sprouts, fresh life, new beginnings pushing up from ruin. And I realized this wasn't death. This was rebirth. Nature doesn't fear destruction, it uses it. That's when I understood one of the most painful, powerful truths of Stoicism, one that we all resist with everything we have. Sometimes, things have to burn before they can grow. Seneca said, "It is in times of security that the spirit should be preparing itself for difficult times. When fortune is kind, the soul can build defenses against her ravages." Nature doesn't waste crisis, it prepares for it, it accepts it, and then it transforms because of it. Forest fires clear out disease, pests, old growth that no longer serves. And guess what? So do the fires in our lives. The betrayal that broke your heart? Maybe it cleared space for deeper trust in yourself. The job you lost? Maybe it burned away comfort so you could chase purpose. The identity you thought defined you, now gone? Maybe that was never really you to begin with. We want to avoid pain so badly. But nature says, go through it. Don't flinch. The fire is your freedom. And that changed how I saw everything. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted the fire. I didn't fear the loss of what was. I welcomed the birth of what could be. I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And I started asking, what is this preparing me for? That shift is everything. That's the Stoic mindset, not just resilience, but alchemical transformation. Turning suffering into strength, loss into liberation, ash into growth. And here's the twist. You can't do that in theory. You have to live it. You have to walk through the fire. You have to let go of everything you thought you needed, your ego, your plans, your false sense of control, and trust something deeper. Something eternal. Something that nature already knows, and has been whispering to us since the beginning. You are not separate from this world. You are it. You are the wind, the tree, the mountain, the fire, the river, all of it. You are change, you are growth, you are rebirth. And you are ready, even when you feel like you're not. Especially then. I sat down on the blackened earth that day and wrote one final note to myself. Let the fire come, I am not afraid anymore. And now, I want to pass that to you. Because this isn't about philosophy anymore. This is about your life. What are you resisting that's trying to shape you? What storm, what fire, what stillness have you been running from? And what if you stopped running? What if you listened? What if nature has been trying to tell you the truth all along? That you don't need more advice. You need to remember who you are. Not who the world told you to be. Who you are, deep down, before the noise. You are stillness. You are strength. You are the wild, unstoppable pulse of life itself, beating forward even in the face of chaos. And the moment you start living like that, like a tree, like a river, like the fire and the sky, everything changes. Because then, nothing can touch you. Not because you're numb, but because you're rooted. Stoicism isn't about avoiding life. It's about being so deeply in it that nothing can shake you. And nature? Nature has been showing us how all along. So here's your challenge. Don't just watch this video and feel inspired. Go outside, right now, even for 5 minutes. Find a leaf, a rock, a breeze, and listen. What's it teaching you? What is nature reflecting back that you've been too distracted to see? Take a breath, let go, begin again. Because the most powerful truths in life are not in books. They're in you. And nature has been trying to remind you of that every single day. It's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to bloom, right where you are. Blank. Underscore, blank. Final mic drop moment, Mr. Beast style climax. So if you've made it to the end of this video, you now hold something most people will never understand. You've learned that the forest, the fire, the river, the mountain, they're not out there, they're you. And here's your final Stoic truth. The strongest soul is not the one that never breaks. It's the one that breaks, burns, and rises again like nature does. Quiet, unstoppable, unshaken. Now go be that soul. And never look at the world, or yourself, the same way again.